Okay, hello everyone. So welcome to the live stream. Just show me in the comments if everything seems to be working. Do you hear me? Oh, great. Yeah. Well, just a head up for people who wanted to watch on Twitch. Looks like I've overloaded my encoding, and so maybe I have to. I can't change that right now, so I'm just going to do it on YouTube for this one time. Okay, so today I'm going to be showing you a game I played just last week, just a few days ago. And so it's sort of interesting because some of you might recognize this shape that I'm showing in the lower right corner, which is a joseki. I made a video about it a few months ago. Let's see if I can find that video. Yes. Not that you have to go and look at it now, but there's this video about this shape, and I gave you a whole variation that you're supposed to follow. And of course, like I often do, I didn't follow that variation. So I did something sort of new there. And also there's going to be kind of a version of the submarine attack where I didn't follow Joseki also. So you get to see how I don't follow my own advice sometimes. So, to get back to the game, oh yes, and my opponent is Tsuji Hana. She's one of the young female professionals. She's a young lady, and she's promising. Just about everyone, all the young players are sort of scary now because they just know about everything about the opening. They know more than most pros do because they've been researching with computers. So they have a lot of this, you might say, rote knowledge to a certain degree. I don't think they've digested it the same way as players like the top players like Shinjin. So top players generally have an understanding of what's happening that goes beyond the variations that they've researched with computers. So I think that's the difference between top players and the younger players who know it, but they maybe they get lost sometimes when they're outside their own variations. So that's and I sort of picked this up from watching Iyama's games. You might recall that just earlier this month, I believe, I was looking at some games Iyama played, and he played a lot of unusual openings. And I had the idea that maybe this was because this sort of took his opponents outside of the most researched areas. So it's sort of what I'm trying to do here, where I'm actually playing a very unusual opening. Usually black would play a parallel opening here, so it's something like this. Right. Yeah, but or a start pawn, of course. So these would be the two most common moves, and playing a different corner like I did, playing diagonally when white has played the start point is a bit unusual. And if white plays a start point here, I think that this is actually would be identical to one of the games that Iyama played in the Nanshin Cup when he defeated all those young players in the international tournament. So, yeah, so back to the game. So my opponent played a 3-4 point, so I felt a good idea to play a Kakari. This actually reverts to a different, almost reverts to a different type of opening. But I think this is probably okay for me. And so what I'm saying here, I'm going to compare it to a different opening. Okay. Just hoping that everything looks good. Yeah, I guess so. So I'm going to compare it to an opening. Let's start it in this corner just to make it more recognizable. And when the opponent plays the 3-4 point here, quite often people play the upper right corner now with black, just to make a very strong approach move here. And this kind of thing can happen. So you can see it's sort of, it's very similar, only the position of this 3-4 point was different. So in this case, black's probably going to play some kind of a pincer or diagonal move. It's almost like a Susaku opening. So it's sort of similar, but it's just a little bit different. So it's sort of similar to that. And I played all these diagonal moves. And I think that the direction of my wall is working fairly well. So this was a point where a computer program will want me to jump into the 3-3 point in the upper left corner. But I wasn't going to do that in this game. So I pushed here. This is probably a viable move. This seems to be okay. And so just to recap that Joseki video that I gave a link for. You don't have to look at it now. I'll just show you the basic variation I was talking about was that black will play here. And then we'll push through and cut. So I was talking mostly about how when black plays the cup, and with this timing, obviously because of the weakness on the left, white has no choice but to connect. Because obviously if white plays on this side, it's just going to be a double Atari. This is just the end of the game. So white connects here, and black has time to play this. It turns out it's bigger than the Atari in the center of the board, and so this is the expected variation here. After which might continue locally or can play to the right side. So for instance, this kind of thing might happen, and white's going to dive into the right side, probably here. And the problem for me, this is perfectly playable for black, but my problem is that I've built this huge wall, and white's going to dive into the moyo, and it looks like I can't really attack very strongly, because if black plays here, then white's going to play here, and white will have enough room to make a living shape. So it's not as if I can kill that group, and I wonder if I'd been a bit weak as far as territory is concerned. So I tried to find something different here. Well, this is the variation that I have advised people to play, and it's the easiest one to understand. And so that's sort of equal there. That's why I'm telling you to play it. I decided to try something else. So this is where it gets exciting. You might say interesting. Yeah, so I pushed through and cut without this preparation. Like in this variation, I had the preparation that will force white to connect on the left. In this variation, that's not played yet. So white has to make a choice at this point. And so this is a bit more interesting and it could be confusing even. The time controls. Ikichin is asking, what were the time controls? This was a game where we both have, as in most Japanese tournaments, we both have 3 hours basic time. And let's see. The second reading, 1 minute per move, is going to start at the last 5 minutes. So you might say we have only 2 hours and 55 minutes of basic time, and then the rest of the 5 minutes are 1 minute at a time. So you can sort of go on indefinitely. If you play within a minute, you keep the 5 minutes. Okay, R10. Jan Vanderstein is saying that pushing with N4 is Gote in the end. And it was, wasn't it, in that variation I was showing you. So isn't taking R10 better instead? And that's sort of the issue. Let's just go back to that other variation. So that's the issue that I was sort of having with this variation here, where black does end with Gote and white gets to play towards the right side. So there's a potential that black's going to not be getting enough territory to make up for giving white the lower side. That said, if black, going back to the position here, so going back to this point, if black extends on the side immediately, white's going to push here. This is actually a fairly big move. This could have been done, and black can still play here, and white will probably just ignore that. It's a completely different game. But I did like the idea of pushing here, and I had idea that I could do it in a different way that works to a certain degree. So that was what my idea was with this move. So it's Jan van der Steen's question here about playing at R10 instead of N4. It's probably going to be answered by, hopefully, by what I'm going to be talking about from here on. Yuda Channel. Hello. Welcome to the stream. Okay, so in the game, white actually captured the one stone. But the idea is that I was thinking that white was going to connect here. And so I was going to play this exchange. And if I play a Hana here, maybe it's going to be like that other variation I was just showing you. Or maybe white's going to play away at this point. But the idea is that I'm not going to do that. This is probably where I dive into the 3-3 point if I decide to follow the computer variation. And this is an example of how it could continue. Locally, it's probably okay for white to be playing this variation that takes the corner. It's a very basic joseki here. So if you don't recognize this joseki, this is one that it's worth remembering. The only sort of counterintuitive move for white is the double Hana here, which does give black a capture. But in return, white gets the corner. So that's the one scary move in that whole variation. Most people, I think, should know this joseki. And then black gets to play here. And so the idea is that I have pushed at n4, but I've refused to use the one tempo there. And I'm not playing the L5 move yet. And usually extending here for white is supposed to be a very effective move. But in this case, the effectiveness of that is reduced by the fact that black can press from the other side. So this is what I plan to do. It actually is pretty much what my plan was. And it also pretty much agrees with my research with a computer program after the game. Okay, so that was my idea here. And my opponent didn't like that, so she kept... And capturing here was probably not the best move. But it's sort of within... from the human point of view, this is an even fight also. It's just that the computer didn't like it as much as connecting on the left. It's not a big enough difference to decide the game. Okay. Leonardo is asking, why did I prefer f4 to taking territory on the left side? Because f4 is sort of a forcing move. So let's see if I can find that variation. No, that's not it. That's the scary variation. So this variation. In this case, I'm playing f4 here because white is threatening to make a big thing there. So playing here, white's probably going to be playing like this, and it's going to be getting territory on the 5th line. And playing at f4, it's usually answered locally. So like if white doesn't answer it and plays on the left, I'm going to be getting, for instance, I'm not sure this is the best local move. I might try something a bit more strong, but I'm going to be capturing that lower. I'm going to have a potential to capture the lower left corner. So that's why it's a fairly big move. So we're making miai of the extension on the side and playing another move towards the lower side. So for instance, if white plays something like this, then I can extend if I want to. So that was my idea. Okay, getting back to the game. So white captured, that means that I get to cut here. And I think this is looking good for black. And I have a number of choices here. So this is kind of a turning point where I didn't really know, but I remembered something that I'd seen when I'd been researching a similar position. It wasn't the same board position, but the lower side here, I actually have seen this same position in a different board position. So, so the move that I remembered was this one, and I found this really interesting. Basically, because these two stones have been played as forcing moves, they sort of came free. So, for instance, if white does something like this, let's use a stone, yeah. So if white does something like this, I haven't really spent a tempo to get those stones on the second line, and sometimes I can just afford to sacrifice them like this. And I've played two moves on the left there, and white has a lot of captured stone. White has captured a lot of black stones, but I didn't actually spend any extra moves to put those stones on the board. So everything there was forcing moves. So you could say that in the process of just expanding white's territory on the side just a little bit, I got 2 free moves here. So in this case, again, if I'm a computer, I'm going to jump into the 3 point. Or if I'm just a mere human being, maybe I'm just going to extend on the side. That's probably good enough. And I'm satisfied with the fact that I got 2 free moves on the left there. Also, ideally, maybe I'm going to be squeezing white again, because these three black stones, they do have 2 liberties. So if I can, in a position where for instance, if I get 2 black stones, something like this, then my next move here is going to set up a squeeze. So it's a bit far away. It takes 3 moves and I'm still losing by one move there, but it does eventually have potential to set up a squeeze. I'm not going to be doing that early in the game. It's going to happen sort of, if it happens, it's going to happen sort of naturally. And if white extends in a different direction, then I can still connect. If white answers the pressing move here on the left, then I'm going to escape out. And my idea is that this exchange here, where I've played this and this, it's pressing white down. So I figure that's a good exchange. And if I play the d3 point next, at any point later, if I reinforce the right side and then I get to play d3, then probably that white group is going to die. So it became easier for me to kill that white group there, potentially. So I played here, and white extended. For white, this is the one move that white sort of wants to play. This is setting up an attack on the right side. So, for instance, just to go back to a slightly more normal variation, I could have played here. This would have been very normal. It's the normal shape. And if white extends here, I'll play something like this. I could have done it this way. It's just that I was worried about what might happen if white plays here. So I felt that this was maybe the better variation. So that's the difference there. And it's, I'm not sure that it was 100% correct. Okay, let's see if I can find that. Yeah, so this is the variation I was showing. I could have done it this way, and I have ways to handle white 4 also. But when I was playing the game, I wasn't so sure about that. So that's why I was playing this move. And this is the move that white wants to play. So it could have happened that way. It could have happened this way. So it's the same idea. For white extending here, and I'm talking vaguely about stuff on the right, what white is aiming at, it's actually the cut here. So this is white's strongest move. Yes, exactly. Sab is saying korigatachi. That was the variation where I showed white capturing 3 stones on the side there. And white pushes through and cuts. So, and I've still seen this position, but it was a different board position. And the move I chose to play, maybe it was true in a different board position, but it wasn't the best move here. In this case, black can actually just directly squeeze, and it seemed a bit too straightforward to me at the time, but this would have been good enough. So I'm sort of teasing you. I'm hoping that people will sort of imagine what I mean when I'm talking about a squeeze. First of all, playing here, it doesn't really work because black has a shortage of liberties. So what black can do is black can play the net here. The net that doesn't work but turns into a squeeze. So white can escape like this. And black wants to reinforce the group in the center and hopefully to get the right side also, and is prepared to sacrifice 2 stones on the right. So what I'm doing here, yes, exactly. Sab had it right. And yes, so that's how it works. And white is winning already. But if white plays away, for instance, something like this, black will be able to play here and get all of the moves with sente. So that sort of reinforces black on the right side. White's probably going to try something just a little bit more, at least a peep. White might try something on the right side. So, for instance, like something like this would set up a way to get rid of the squeeze. It's actually pretty significant to get rid of this squeeze and make this a forcing move for white, having a stone at 12. It would start a fight here. I could have played this way. In fact, this was apparently better than the game. In the game, yes. So yeah, get back to the game. Yeah, here we are. In the game, Okay, let's just go one more variation. If black plays here, this is sort of sloppy because white will extend, and black has to... It's a crane nest situation, so if black plays elsewhere, white's going to capture these stones. So that's called the crane's nest. Although usually you do it with fewer black stones, so those black stones are sort of ruining the visual effect, but yeah, it's the same Tsuji. So the move I played was this one, the empty triangle. Yeah, I was really happy to find this move. Yeah, and it's really bad shape, but when white plays here and black plays here, it's much more effective in filling white's liberties. So that was the idea. So I'm going to sacrifice on the right, and I'm going to capture white stones on the left. And having these two stones filling white's liberties was very, very effective. So this worked. This was the game variation. But actually, white could have played here. And this would probably have been better for white. And I'm going to play here. And because of white's shortage of liberties, so for instance, if white does something like this, white has a shortage of liberties on the left. And so this is just not working for white. So that's the whole point of this move. And anything white might try to play with sente, it's not sente. I'm not going to answer that. So I'd probably play something like this and have no problem. Excuse me. I'd probably play it just like this, actually. That's good enough. So white plays an Atari here, and it's going to chase me and and try to take the right side on a large scale. I worked out a variation after the game with my computer, so it was something like that. So I'd be happy enough with this. My whole idea was to sacrifice the right side, but Katago was saying that this is better for white. So I got this shape. This is actually a success for black. And yes, so white peeps here. This was a point where I wasn't sure what I should do. So in the game, I played it safe and I connected. But I was thinking, what happens if I play here? This is a move that I really wanted to play, and it turns out that Katawa seemed to agree with me. So the idea with this move is that if in the game I played here, and white naturally played to the right side, and I captured white's stones. So these stones are dead, but white has all sorts of aji potential connected with them. So white moves anywhere about here. Any of these moves will change if white plays any of these moves, I have to be careful of what's happening on the right. If white just connects here, this is pretty dangerous for white. The whole thing is probably dead. It's either dead or it's going to be escaping in a very clumsy and unhappy shape. So in either case, white doesn't want to do it. So the problem is that eventually, let's just say, take all these triangles off, say that eventually I've reinforced the center. At some point, white's going to be able to squeeze like this. And reduce my corner territory. So there's some potential there for white to reduce the corner. So obviously it's not a problem right now, but later on when the center loses its value, it could become a real problem. And it could be a very effective move, that is. So thinking of that is something that you think in the middle game also. Thinking of that potential there, I was wondering if I should play this first. And if white simply answers here, white still has to play on the right side. The right side is more important than capturing these two stones. So white will play on the right side, and I get to play here. And having that 1 to 2 exchange in, it makes it a more efficient way of capturing the stones. So I would like to have done that. And the variation I wasn't sure about was this one. So just to show you what the computer is saying it's big enough for black to play on the right side. And yeah. And at this point, like capturing just 2 stones here on the right, probably not going to be satisfying enough for white. So what white tries to do is white is going to try to capture everything with this move. And black gets a little squeeze here. And 15 is an important move, just getting rid of that weak point on the left and preparing to squeeze in the center. So white's going to push through, and I'm going to get some forcing moves from the center. Something like this. So this is good enough. So this would have been a good variation for me. and I could not read it out during the game. So that's why I didn't play it. I had the idea, but it was just a lot of reading to do. The fun part of it is that I had white playing here, but what happens if white tries to get some extra territory in the corner? That's when it gets to be fun. Because I can actually squeeze and capture, or sometimes capture. It's either capturing or it's going to be better than that. So if white pushes through here, this is the easy variation where black gets a ladder. So yeah, I'll leave it there. I know some people like it when I chase the end of the ladder, but it seems pretty obvious at this point. It's better for white to go after the 2 stones. So white probably will do it without 18. It's better for white to do it right now. White captures 2 stones. You can see how black's stone on the left here at 15, how this stone is coming into play here when black connects. So this starts the squeeze. If white just plays an Atari and connects, this makes it easy for me. So this is black has multiple ways. So yeah, something like this. Black has 4 liberties or more on the lower side, and white has only 3. So that was easy. It's actually slightly better for white to push through straightly. So after black plays here, white pushes through. And if black tries the same thing, you would think that this squeeze is going to work again, but white's going to escape in this direction. With a set of forcing moves. In this case, it's actually a bit more tricky. If black tries the net, yeah, just this 50 move variation I'm showing you here. Oh, sorry, not that way. It's not quite working. It's a bit more complicated. I think white's probably going to win by 1 move. Just leave it there. It's still very complicated, but it's not the best way for black to play. So getting back to this variation here, when white plays here, it's actually better for black to play here. And now white's going to die. So if white plays this move, which is usually the Tsuji, now it's going to turn into a ladder. Or if white gets this in, it doesn't even have to be a ladder. Black can push down to the side. Black can get fancy and play this one. I bet this is going to be a ladder. I'm just having fun at this point. And black can keep on pushing for a while, just to make sure it hits the black stones instead of the white ones. So something like this, and it's gonna succeed as a ladder. Yeah. So all these variations. Let's just give something slightly better for white. So white pushes through here, and black plays here. White can win the semi with this move. So now white has 4 liberties, and black has 3 for the time being. But if black can get a Hana here, in fact black can, yeah. So if black can play like this, there's going to be a ko attached to this. So it's going to be like this. And at this point, since I don't have any ko threats, I could just play away or whatever. It's going to be really painful for white. White needs a stone here, and it's still going to be a ko. So this would be just a lot of squeezing from the center, and it would be still a ko. It would be very bad for white. Right, so back to the game. So that was kind of a digression, but it's a lot of fun, isn't it? So back to the game. So that's stuff that I tried to think about at this point. And I was thinking of this move, but I didn't get anything close to reading out all of those variations in completeness. And so I played it safe here. So that was something I was sort of a bit disappointed with after the game. But it turned out that weakness that we had underneath, the fact that white can sometimes squeeze from here, it sort of disappeared in the game variation. So I lucked out there. So this is called I call it the submarine attack, or the submarine approach. And this, I actually made a video about this. I think I can find the video link for you. Just not that I want you to go there now, but yeah. Okay, that's not it. I made a video about the submarine attack too. And I told you how that's going to work out. And that's not how I played it in this game either. So I'm just ignoring the josekis here. It's the most popular way to approach white's knight enclosure from the start point. So white's strongest move is to play the attachment. Another way for white could have played would be to play here, which would also be a way of reinforcing the corner. And it would leave less room for black to be trying stuff like I did in the game. Playing on the outside like this is usually bad for white, unless white has potential for a center moyo or something like that. So this is also a move that has been played. It's one of the much more complicated variations. So I wouldn't really advise that to you if you haven't seen this. If you're used to this variation, then you can play it. There's a lot of complications with this one. So this was the game move. And I made a video telling you what happens if black plays here and white cuts and crawls. And so that's the video that I put up a link for. And it's something like this. Something like this. And you can see black's sort of building a wall on the right upper side. That's the wrong place for me to be building a wall. So if we get something like this and something like this, it's actually I've sort of made a relatively weak group there, not accomplishing very much. So this is not what I want to do here. That's what the joseki was. It's what black usually does when black plays that submarine attack. But I didn't want to do that. So if you want more detail there, you can watch the video. But I played here. This is actually a combination that I have seen, again, definitely not this board position, but I've seen it with katabo. And the idea is that if white plays here, sometimes this move works better. So let's take a look at how that's working. If white pushes here, sometimes, just sort of a hypothetical thing here, when we get into this variation that I was talking before, this exchange here, it's really bad shape for white. So first of all, when I play here, oh sorry, not that way, this way. When this happens, sometimes I get a forcing move from this side. So there's some extra potential gain there. And also I'm going to go into this variation where I have a lot of cutting points. But you can see there's a lot of black stones on the outside there. And I probably just sacrifice some stuff on the side there. And I'm starting to build towards the center. So this is something like what my idea was. So just that exchange of those two stones. Let's see if I can find where I put the mark in. So it's just the exchange of this black stone for this white stone. These two stones here. This exchange, when I get into that variation where I wedge against white, it often becomes a good exchange. So it's just a very slight advantage I'm trying to get there. And white pins it. So this was an aggressive move, and it started a fight on the left side. So now I wedge here. And if white plays here, you can see how those black stones on the other side are sort of playing into it. And I'm going to reduce the liberties of these two stones here. So let's see how that works. If white plays here, that means I'm going to be able to connect on the side here. So that's the idea that I have with this. Filling white's liberties. And if white plays to capture the cornerstones, I still have something of a squeeze here. So for instance, at some later date, if I play here, and white plays here, white will not be able to connect against the two stones here. So so white's not going to be able to connect the two stones, so that's okay. So I do get some extra potential to squeeze. In actual play, I would probably play... Oh yes, I'll probably play this one, which is setting up a squeeze here. So something like this, and like this. So I have a lot of thickness throughout the board, and I'm hoping to attack white on a large scale. And I haven't given away an outstanding amount of territory yet. So white has something like 15 points in the upper left, a few points on the upper side, so at least 20 points there. And about 25 points in the lower right corner. So white has something like 45 points. If during this attack I can secure the whole lower left area, I'm pretty close to that already. And so I just have to get some extra mileage out of the attack that I'm going to set up against white's group there. Back to the game. Yeah. So white played here and I played like this. And when we got into this fight, white actually answered inside. Oh yeah. Okay. Ethan Winter asked a good question here. Is there still an advantage to d13 if white replies c13? Yes. So that's a completely different variation. But if white plays here, this variation of the shoulder hit, just ignoring, you can ignore the stone at e18 now. It's not, there's not so much of a direct relation here, but it has more to do with black's moyo. So just in the context of expanding black's moyo in the center and the lower left area, white crawling and black jumping here is working perfectly for black. So that's, if we just look at the shoulder hit itself, this is the variation that black is sort of hoping for. This is the best variation for black here. So that's just locally working, and it doesn't really connect directly so easily to that move I played at e18. But it's not really bad either. So so for instance, in a shape like this, where maybe white's going to be, this would actually be a lot of moyo for black, a lot of territory in the center. And I would use the stone something like this. So I would still be trying to make a living shape somehow, maybe here on the upper side. I'm not so sure about black 18 there, but some move on the side. And I've got some profit towards the lower left area. So that was sort of my plan. Or I could play a more normal, I actually didn't research this after the game. Black can play a more normal move, something like this, for instance, towards the center. And that would work too. That would get me more center. And on the side there, I would eventually be probably playing this move and some kind of extension. Although it's in a game like this, it's not so urgent. I might just continue surrounding the center. The reason it's not so urgent is because the center is pretty big. So if white plays a move like this, then I can still be pressing from the center, and the upper side, like, there's not so much potential for white in the upper left in this game where I'm sort of dominating the center of the board. So back to the game. So white pincered, yeah. This is actually working for me because white's sort of in a shortage of liberties. So that's what I'm working with when I play this Hane. And if white plays here, I'm going to play here. And I have a forcing move at e15. So even if white plays here, it's going to be like this. Capturing the two stones there is really big, so that's not really working for white. Or if white plays here, I'm going to squeeze first. And then I just sacrifice the 3 stones. So it could be an Atari even, or it could just extend. And I've got a very strong shape there, so I get to attack white first. So here's the game. Yeah, this was a bit painful. So I think actually white was supposed to play something on this side. But I do have some potential eyes there. So if I cut here, white does have a shortage of liberties there. So I'm going to be getting some... So for instance, even if white plays here, white cannot continue there. White has to play here. You can see I'm getting this area on the left side. So I'm getting some eyes, getting some extra territory. And it's an even trade. For territory, my getting... erasing the whole corner there is about equal to white getting the upper side. So that was an even trade, but the gain for me is that my group there is now completely alive. So that's the positional advantage that I'm getting from this trade. So yeah, this was painful though. I think white had to go into that other variation where white plays here. And now I was feeling happy and I played here. Katago didn't like that move, but I was thinking all I had to do was settle that group and should be okay. Lost some of my advantage probably. And this was a neat move. I was thinking maybe I should have played here once. I have a number of ways to fix the shape in the right side. So this is one of them. Threatening to cut at R6. and get another squeeze like this. So I can reinforce my position with a squeeze, something like this. So this is one example of what I can do on the right there. And I would continue attacking white. 13 was probably a pretty important point for me. And so slightly disappointing that I crawled and I gave this to white. And then I played very tightly here. This does reinforce the corner. It makes the corner into a black territory. So I was thinking that I seem to have a clear advantage at this point. And probably it was true. But I've been playing a bit too tightly, and I've given away a lot of my advantage. So white does try something in the corner. This is just setting up some forcing moves from outside. You can see how the fact that I did play here, it does make a difference to what's going to happen here. In that way it was an important reinforcement. So if I had not done that, I would have been leaving white the option to erase the corner. And I have to remember that white does have a forcing move at this point. So I don't really want white to get this point at g4. And I pulled back. So this was sort of forced. And white connect. Now when white connects here, I think white was planning to escape. So just to show you the variation, if white does something like this, this is going to be really dangerous because white's group on the left side, it's still very big. So if we get into a position like this where black captures white on the left, and white's probably going to capture these black stones on the lower side. These black stones in the center, they're actually not very big because I still have so many ways to push white around here. So this is just one example of how it could have turned out. That territory in the center of the board, it's not so big. So this, what black's territory on the left, although black only captured 10 white stones there, there's a lot of space attached to those 10 white stones. So it's more like 40 points. And it's bigger than the black stones in the center of the board, which are about 30 points, I think. But black's getting a good position on the right side too. And black's territory on the lower side is actually, the borderline is better than it was before. So this is going to be a win for black. And in the game, yeah, white played here and I played here, finishing that off. But in this variation, the exchange here is bad for white. So to go back to that, so for instance, if white had just played here, and I had played here, and we assume something like the game variation, when I get this borderline sealed up, what white does later on is white gets to squeeze here. And this is going to be significantly reducing my territory on the side. So sometimes white can do this. Or even if white has a lot of co-threats, white can even do something like this and fight a ko. So there's some danger there. So it was good for me that this exchange was played and white didn't have a good follow-up. So that was losing some ground there. So at this point, I'm playing very tightly again. I could have played something on the upper side. That might have been better. Something like this, for instance, would have been a big move. I'm trying to simplify things. Maybe not the best move. I'm still okay. I probably should have jumped out. That's not the game move. Sorry. Oh well. That's actually not what she played. She played here. Let's see. I'll have to put the rest of the game moves in. I had an incorrect record. So white played here. I should have probably jumped out. But in the game, I played here, and I sacrificed those stones. So my goal here is that I'm looking forward to this move, which, first of all, I'm threatening to wedge at e6 to capture these two stones, so it's a significant endgame move. And it also takes away white's eye space in the center. So I've taken away white's eyes. And by creating, and it's also significant that I've sort of created a forcing move here. If there's a black stone at the triangle, I can cut at e9, or that's d9. That's d9, yeah. And I can cut at d9. And so why am I focused on this thing here? It's because sometimes white can peep here. And if that black group in the upper left is weak, white can push here. And actually this can be cut off. So here you see me getting these stones in the center. I'm actually setting up to be playing something like this so I can counterattack. And in a case where I sacrifice the upper left and I capture white in the center is still going to be big. So this is something I can afford. And you can see how it's sort of working with these stones that I'm getting towards, let's see, where's my, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to have to input the game variation as I go on. But in this variation, so white doesn't have that. And in this variation, with my stones lining up in the center of the board, this gets rid of this move completely. So this would not be a problem because black can connect underneath. Black can even play once here and get some profit, some extra profit. So the move that I have to worry about is this one, which in some cases it cuts me off. With this line of stones here in the center, it's not working. So that was just not working for white. And so white jumps out. White has to save the center group. So white jumps out here. And I curl around. So I'm still putting pressure on white. White played once here. And because black has a forcing move at J10, white cannot connect up like this. So white diagonal move. And here. And again, white cannot play, white jumped out. White cannot play here because I can just cut it like this. So this would be a disaster. And I would capture the whole center group. So I'm putting a lot of pressure on white in the center of the board. And white jumped out. I played here. And so I'm still looking at a squeeze here. And this is what happened in the game. So I got a squeeze there. This did make it slightly easier for me to attack the center. So maybe it would have been better for white to pull back here. Which sometimes I can still cut at Q7, but not always. R8 was a big move, yes. R8? I thought, well, just attaching once. I showed you various ways I could have squeezed on the right, but I was figuring the left half of the board was important enough that I could allow white to continue playing there. Okay. I'll try to be more understandable. So this is the board position. And you can see black's not really gaining any territory here. I'm just trying to put pressure on white in the center. So at this point, I do have a fairly large territory in the lower left area. I captured these two stones, these 4 stones also. So I have a fairly large area here. And I have close to 20 points, 15, 20 points here in the upper right. So those are black's assets. White has a territory here. It's probably getting close to 30 points. And white has a territory on the upper side. And so I think I'm okay with territory, but I have to reduce white's area here to a certain degree. And I'm trying to use the attack in the center to do that. So in the game, what I did here was I played an attachment. And something like this. And here. So what I'm trying to do with this sequence is I'm trying to set up a peep at 018. So for instance, if white plays here, I can cut. And if white connects there, then I can play the peep here. So I'm trying to connect up the whole sequence to a peep at 40 or 018. And I'm giving you this as a variation. This is actually up to this point. Up to this point, it is the game variation. So white played here, and I played here. Also, if white pushes through, I can push through here. And again, this is going to be forcing, and I get the peep. So it's just peeping here and connecting up to the corner. That's a huge move. It's a lot of territory. It's something like 15 points. So that's a significantly big move that I'm playing here, with a potential squeeze against the 6 white stones left behind. So in the game, white actually played here, counterattacking on a large scale. So if I do something like this, white's going to try to kill the whole group with a sequence something like this. I have to be careful here. And I chose this point to peep. So if white answers here, I can extend. And with a forcing move at L3, or a forcing move at L17 or O16. So I'll show you how O16 works, is when white does it this way. and tries to cut me, I can use this to get a forcing move here. Or if white plays here, in this case, if white plays like, let's see. This is probably trouble for white on the other side. So something like this. And some, yeah, it's probably just trouble for white in the center of the board. I'm not so sure about this variation, but it does look like white is in a bit of danger here. Let's try to get back to the game variation. So in the game, yeah, I peeped here. It looks, just because of this forcing move that I have towards the side, I guess it looks a bit too dangerous for white to connect on the second line. So white played here. And, okay, so this is a point where I have a chance to finish the game. That is true. Oh, sorry, I forget the name of our Korean friend. Welcome to the stream. It is cold in Japan too, yes. We're getting a lot of cold front coming in from the north. Most of the country is snowing right now, I think. But fortunately, I'm on the east side of Japan, protected by some big mountains, so it's not all that cold. I mean, it's cold, but it's not snowing at least. So this is the game situation, and it was my chance to finish off the game. Probably playing here. White's going to die if white leaves it. White's probably going to protect this way, getting some territory, threatening to make two eyes. And so if I play here, white can make a hanging connection on this side. Or if I play here, white can make two eyes. So if I play this way, it established a living shape for white on the side, and I have a slight lead if I cut here. So this would have been good enough, but I got greedy. And I played once here. So the idea with this move is that by taking away the one eye that white could have made there, and it was a sente eye for white, so by taking away that eye, I'm putting more pressure on white's group in the center, and sort of hoping that white's going to have to answer here, so that I can have played 42 and gotten this point. So I was trying to get both points. And 42 is a big move because it sets up a cut here. So if I cut here, I'm going to take all 4 white stones. So that's, if white plays that, it's something like 6 points in sente. Or if white plays 2 moves locally and connects everything, it adds up to something like 15 points difference, compared to black cutting it at d8. Okay, so let's see, where am I? So I played at 42, and my opponent ignored it and played here. So this is the final stage of the game, where when white connects it at 43, it's still very close as far as territory is concerned, and I'm going to try to get some extra profit towards the center as I attack white, and eventually if I cut here, maybe I'm going to be okay. So it has to work perfectly here. But it sort of depends on what happens in the center. Okay. Is Kobayashi Koichi still a very strong player and actively participates? He's not at the top of the tournaments, obviously. If you look at the championship matches, you see people like Iyama, Shibano, and some other top players like Kyokage and Koiso. And he's not up there anymore, but he's still participating in the tournament. So he's still, on a good day, he's still a very strong player. So let's see. Here we are. I have to attack white in the center. So that's what I did with this move and this way. And I think I played the Tari right now. So this was the board position. And I pushed through and cut. So this is... I don't actually need to protect these 3 stones, because if white pushes through here, I have to peep here. So that's something I can leave for the time being. White played here. And yes, so white played this way. And I think now I did play this exchange. And so basically I would have been okay if I'd done something like this, and white's going to do something like this, and I'm going to cut here. So something like this is probably good enough for black. If white plays the Atari, I have this move as a forcing move, so white cannot save those 4 stones. And black seems to be winning by a small margin. It's a very small margin. But it's good enough. In the game I pushed through here. If white had played here, it's very subtly a mistake. And my plan was I was going to play here, actually. I was probably going to play here. And this would have been a bit more dangerous because it gets into this variation. Sorry, not that way. This way. Gets into this variation where black cuts white. And I was thinking I was going to play this trade. Okay. Just to clarify, if white plays here, black is actually alive in the center there and got a lot of territory out of this. So this is just really good for black, and it's bad for white. So white's going to play an Atari in this direction, and if black connects, white can capture black stones in the center. So in this case, white could just play an Atari here. If white plays an Atari immediately, it's not working yet because black can capture these stones. So white has to start with the Atari here, and black cuts here, and white's going to play here. It sort of changes what happens here, because in this case, there could be some problems with this move. And it all happens because of this white stone. This white stone here is making a difference. So going back to the previous variation, normally if black plays a move here, if black plays a move here, normally white cannot play the hanging connection because of this ko here. So in this variation, I've sort of lost the opportunity to play that. But in some cases, usually, white would be forced to play a solid connection, in which case I'm perfectly okay on this side because I can capture this. And it connects up to my stones. So there's an issue there of the question of whether white's going to have to solidly connect at 75, or can white make the hanging connection. So if white can make a hanging connection here, which is what was happening in that other variation where I played here and white captured, and this was sort of what I was planning to do. In this variation, white actually can play the hanging connection. So it could potentially be a problem if white plays like this. And I don't really want to give up that one black stone. So if I play here, I can save the group, but I'm going to lose a lot of territory. So there's this would probably be bad for black. Or maybe I could play this. This is actually maybe the better variation where I'm making an eye there, and now my group is going to be okay. So if white answers something like this, now I can capture these stones. So it was sort of undecided at this point, but let's just take a look at the game variation now. I suppose that was slightly complicated. So in the game, white actually played on this side, and this was not so good because when I push here, if white plays here, I have a peep here that's going to cut white off. So this is going to cut white's group off in the center. If white plays here, white can actually save the group, or if white plays, maybe it's better for white to play this way. White can actually save this group. It's connected, but this has been really successful for black because first of all, this is going to be forcing. Now I have the ko there, so white has to connect. So I can capture this way. And I saved all my stones in the center here. So I saved all these stones, connecting them up, and white only got the 3 points here. So that wasn't enough for white. It's not even a real 3 points because sometimes I can play this point. I have a forcing move, let's see. I have a forcing move here. So white doesn't have any eyes there. And sometimes I can play here, and in some cases that's going to take away white's all of white's points. So sometimes white's going to have to put a stone in here. So it's 2 or 3 points, depending. So this was not good enough for white. So white's already losing at this point, but seemed to have some kind of oversight with this move, after which I played here, and this is just cut off. So the interesting variation is, in the game white played here and I played here, and it's cut off already. I think the oversight that white had was this move, where white can squeeze, and if black connects, white captures everything. So for a moment it seems to be working, but black has the double Atari here. And, oh sorry, it turns out these stones are connected. So this would trash the whole upper side, and it would be bad for white. This is, so this, all the variations here in the center, I actually had them worked out. I had them read out. Except for the fact that some of them were actually, the score of the territory was, I wasn't so sure about that sometimes. So the game ended with white playing here, which was just a way to sort of set up the resignation. White could have played here, in which case I play here. And it looks like a ko, but it's not really a ko. So if we assume white plays ko, I don't even have to answer that, but at some point I could just connect here and allow white to capture these and capture these. So that would be good enough for an easy win for me. So this was the game variation up to this point. Yeah, so let's put a result. Sort of disappointed that the main variation that I prepared was actually, there was a mistake in it. So I'm doing this as a variation, but this is the actual game variation here, where I connected, and yeah, after this exchange, white resigned. So that was my game, my final game of this year. So maybe a good start for next year. The key point in the center here, I sort of got into a bad habit here where I was a bit sloppy towards the end. I wasn't playing the easy way to win the game. So if we go back here, I should probably just have played this variation, as I was showing before, where white lives in the center, but I get to this point. So it's very simple. What I should be trying to do here is that 44 is such an important point that I should just ensure that I get to that point in Sente. And it seems to be a small advantage for black, but maybe I wasn't so sure about that, and I played the more dangerous variation, where I played this. I'm trying to get some extra profit here, but if white had answered correctly, this would have been more dangerous in the game. Oh, so I guess that's it, and thank you for watching. I think the interesting part of the game was about this this variation of the pressing move at 5-4, where I did not follow the joseki that I told you guys to play. So you can sort of check this out in relation to that video that I gave a link for. And later on I'll put it in the description of the video also. So if you come back and watch it later and you want to look it up, you can I'll make it so you can find it in the description. So there'll be related videos that I'll put links in the description. But yeah, I wasn't playing what you might call the standard variation here, and it actually worked fairly well. So there's that thing that maybe some of you can use it in your own games. Yes, Telegraph Go, that's right. I had a problem with the Twitch stream. It was probably just the settings of my my editor, so I can fix that next time. And Rick is asking what tournament. This was the Kisei tournament, so it was what they call the first tournament. They call it the Kisei FT tournament. So that's the F and T stand for first tournament. Thank you, Leonardo. And stands for Kisei F and T first tournament. And Kisei actually has a lot of round robin leagues. Well, not round robin. They have a lot of leagues now. So if I win my way through this, something like 5 or 6 rounds, there's going to be a C League, which is a large number of players, and it's kind of a Swiss system. So I don't play everyone, but I'm going to play something like 5 games. And if I win most of them, then I'll be staying in that league. If I have an outstanding record, then I go up to B League, then there's an A League, and then there's a special league and a special league. So there's a lot of leagues in the Kisei tournament. So it's a bit, that's the one tournament that seems to like to create these unique and complicated tournament systems. But this is what this game was played in the first tournament. All right, so I'm wrapping up here. Thanks to everyone for visiting me on Christmas. I'm not dressed up in a costume, but yeah, it is Christmas for people in the Americas, I guess. So Merry Christmas to everyone, and thanks for coming. And I'll continue into next year. So I'll see you next year, hopefully. Thank you and goodbye. So I'm finishing here.